What's up, guys? Today's going to be a different episode. We're going to be doing this for the next 3 months where I'm bringing on Mike Zanetti and we're chopping it up about college football. So we're going to be talking all things college football playoff contenders, upset central from last week, who we've got in the Who You Got game of the week this week, and all things college football, talking about Heisman contenders and so forth. Mike is an expert in the field, a young gun coming at you with a lot of knowledge and a lot of insight. So make sure you stay tuned. Check it out. This is something that I used to do more frequently at the beginning stages of this podcast. And so I was super excited to bring on Mike and have this free-flowing conversation regarding college football. It's so refreshing to be able to just chop it up about sports like I used to do. It felt like talking to Mike was almost like talking to my friends back in the day. So super excited for you guys to hear this and would love for you guys to interact. So hit us with some comments. We're going to be asking you some questions. Would love to hear your insight as well. So in the comments down below, make sure to hit that if you're on YouTube. All right. So a reminder, this podcast is being brought to you by Nation's Best Football. Shout out to Nation's Best for everything that they do. I've been working with Nation's Best for the last 6 years. Super grateful for the connection there. Go follow Nation's Best on Instagram and all their other platforms. This is the Gametime Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time!
This is the Gametime Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens. What's up, everybody? Welcome out to another episode of the Gametime Guru podcast. This is an exciting episode for us because we're going to be starting a series that's going to happen once a month for the next couple of months through the rest of the college football season. So, as you guys heard in the introduction, this is brought to you by Nation's Best Football. And through Nation's Best, I was able to connect with our guest here. His name's Mike Zanetti, and he's an expert in the field of athletics, but we're going to be chopping it up about college football specifically. I would also encourage you guys to go follow him on his social media platforms. Mike, real quick, shout out your social media platforms so that we can put that here in the description so people know where to find you.
Football Reality Podcast on everything. Big avid NFL college football fan, but just really appreciate you having me here, Shane.
Absolutely. So if you guys haven't seen Mike's footage, this will be an opportunity to get to know him and then go follow him and look at his recaps and just any of his breakdowns that he does for his show and his platforms. It's actually really, really insightful. And I love the format in which you do it. So highly encourage you guys to go check it out. There's a reason we're bringing us both together to chat it up. We're going to be talking about college football. So for those who have followed me for the last 8 years, a little different format. Normally I'm here interviewing guests as that's part of the platform, but I used to do this consistently with other people. I've done it with my Ohio State channel, Scarlet and Great on YouTube, where we're talking, we're bouncing off, the actual like X's and O's and just talking about recaps and so forth. So I get an opportunity to kind of get back into that realm with this. So I'm really excited for that. First and foremost, we're going to chop it up about this last week in college football. So this was one of the craziest weeks, obviously for this season, but in recent times, in my opinion, for college football. I mean, especially in the SEC, but it was upset central. So Mike, let's chat about that biggest upset in your opinion from this weekend. And what were your biggest takeaways?
Yes. I mean, there was a lot of great games. You had Arkansas beating Tennessee, but I think out of all the big upsets, I don't think everyone expected Alabama to lose that game. Like, the spread was pretty big, 22 points, but Vanderbilt came out playing, and everyone is like, all at halftime, people were like, yeah, I don't know if Vanderbilt's going to keep it up, and they kept their foot on the gas all game. 40-35 win. It was great back and forth match. Milroe just couldn't pull it back together. He had that pick six early, so it was Vanderbilt all from the beginning to the end. It was honestly great game all around.
The crazy thing about that, it goes along with what you were saying, is at halftime, I was one of those. I was like, man, I just feel like Bama's just going to, put it together. Usually these elite teams can figure out a way to just put their foot on the gas and fix it. But Vandy did such a good job just executing. A lot of teams buckle when the pressure gets on and the momentum shifts. Vanderbilt was doing it. And the crazy thing is, Mike, what I noticed, it wasn't just passing. Like, they were owning the line of scrimmage and executing at the line. The front seven were getting crushed. I already thought Bama's secondary was suspect. I think Georgia exploited that. Other teams are going to exploit that later on in the season. Their secondary suspect just because they're having a hard time covering, especially at the corner and the safety positions. Even their linebackers are struggling to get depth in the backfield there. So, but their line, man, their line was getting pushed around, and Vandy was chunking 4 or 5 yards a carry. And I was like, oh my gosh, dude, they went toe to toe with them. They didn't have to get like gimmicky. They didn't have to go out of their scheme. They just went hat on a hat and played their offense. And that's what I thought was awesome. What did you think about Vanderbilt's quarterback? Like, what do you think about him, man? Was that a legacy game for him?
He played awesome. Diego Pavia, 4 incompletions. He went 16 to 20, 250, 2 touchdowns. He even had 20 carries on the ground. But it's like you're saying, it's that trench-like football where you get good blocks, you own the trenches, you run the line of scrimmage, run the game of the clock, the whole game, you're in possession. So really great game from them, and just honestly great football. Like, it's any given Saturday, any given Sunday, anything can happen, and people aren't expecting it. But like we said, Vanderbilt came out swinging.
One of those things, any given Saturday it's a good point, because I've heard a lot of people, Mike, I'm sure you've heard the same, like around the media sphere. We're talking like everyone's got this opinion of the transfer portal and the NIL stuff has ruined college football. I would argue that while there are some things that probably need to be cleared, I would argue that it's actually leveled the playing field a little bit. I mean, you're seeing teams across the entire country competing that normally you wouldn't just expect that to happen. I mean, maybe this year is an anomaly. I don't know, but it feels like we're starting to see that anyone can compete with anyone. And it's ironic to me, at least, that it's the year of the 12-team football playoff, like the college football playoff. Like the one year that we finally expand the playoff is the one year that I feel like there's some competitive matchups across the board, because usually it's like 2 teams and the rest of the pack. I initially thought that was the case this year too, but I'm starting to see like, nah, dude, I think given the matchup, like you said, any given Saturday, what are your thoughts on the NIL stuff and transfer portals and the state of college football right now?
There's been a lot of deals. I would love if colleges would just pay athletes. Obviously, it probably won't come to that, but NIL, it's good opportunity for people to get their brand out there, brand image likeness. So for me, I love the way it's going, but I think people, especially these athletes, I think more people are focused on now the money rather than playing the game. And it's kind of taken away from it a little bit, but at the same time, it gives them more of a motivation to play. So you can play both sides with it.
Oh, totally. I mean, I feel like they've done a pretty good job in the last, like rounding it up a little bit. Like for the very first time, like for the first year that it was kind of just legalized, it was like the wild, wild west. I mean, every business was trying to get a piece of the pie too. Like, how do we help athletes with NIL? So we had like tons of people starting businesses as consulting firms, and they didn't even know how it worked themselves. We had athletes signing deals, didn't know how to sign, like pay taxes on any of those deals. So they were signing deals without having any clue how the income actually worked, and they're stuck with $30,000 in tax payments they can't pay. Like a lot of stuff was going on. I feel like they've kind of reeled it in a little bit. They've got some stuff taken care of, but I would actually agree, just as a side note, I agree with the schools paying them. I with the amount of money that comes in now, I guess there's the whole concept of like a scholarship. How much value does it actually bring from a monetary standpoint? I know that's going to be something they would have to discuss. Like, your full ride scholarship at Boise State's a lot different than a full ride scholarship at Ohio State. I say those two schools because I'm a Boise State grad and a Buckeyes fan, so it's kind of weird. Anyway, it's completely different. Like a full ride scholarship at Boise State's worth nothing compared to what a full ride, because of the cost of school and everything that goes out there in Columbus. So I guess that's stuff that they'd have to figure out if they're going to start paying athletes out of the college's funds and stuff, or the NCAA themselves. But I think that would be a good way to just kind of level it out and have less like opportunity for error. As a Boise State guy, though, I'm looking at a former quarterback from Boise State, Talon Green. Talon is the quarterback over at Arkansas. They obviously upset Tennessee. The SEC was having a hard time this week with like just the top dogs were starting to kind of they were seeing how the competition has leveled out a little bit. What are you seeing with Tennessee? Because I couldn't tell at the beginning of the year what I felt about them. I felt like Georgia and Alabama were probably going to run. I thought Texas had a good, like those three and the rest of the pack out of the SEC. And then I thought, oh, well, Tennessee's playing. Ole Miss is doing their thing. But I don't know. I don't know what I feel about that. I saw, Talon Green, who is a former Boise State quarterback, know him well, is over there playing in the SEC and takes down Tennessee. What were your thoughts on that game?
See, Arkansas is a really good football team. And the one thing you got to really showcase or at least highlight around Tennessee is obviously they're playing good football and they're a really good team, but Nico Imaliava is a freshman. So you're going to see some struggles there. He's just getting to the collegiate level. So look, there's going to be some kinks to work out. And he's doing so far, at least for his freshman year, he's doing really well. the running game, Dylan Sampson is doing really well. He ran all over Arkansas, but it was just like a good defensive battle, really. But it's really just been, I think, can the offense pull it together? A little bit of inexperienced, couple young guys. So that's really the main concern, I think, for them to make a run as what they were, a top 4 team. Now they dropped off.
I like that insight. I think if any young gun is going to take some time to kind of get their footing under them, unless you are a wide receiver who is a freshman, whether it be at Alabama or at Ohio State. We're seeing some crazy good freshmen come out of the pack, and those are the ones that are just a different breed, right? Those are the kinds of guys that are playmakers that kind of came out the womb that way, it feels like. But typically speaking, there's a transition period coming into the college game, trying to get your feet under, especially in the SEC, right? That level of college football, it's going to take some time. But I think both of those squads are really good football programs. But I'm excited for the state of college football. Really stoked about where it's going. I feel like this year is going to be a really fun playoff. But here's where I wanted to chat about the rankings. And people who have followed me have probably heard me talk about it. I get pretty passionate about the ranking system. I don't understand why there's a coaches poll and an AP poll before the college football playoff poll comes out. Why can't we all just wait for at least 6 weeks to kind of figure it out, right? We're seeing teams that are dropping off. I mean, the one issue I have with it is the main issue is by the season's end, you start seeing voters talking about, especially the college football playoff committee, they'll say, oh, well, this team had X amount of top 25 wins. And then you go back and you look at it and you go, well, that team shouldn't have been a top 25 team first off, because when they beat them, yeah, sure, they were ranked in top 25, and then they lost 2 or 3 games. They fell out of the top 25. They're not a top 25 team, but because they were at the time that they played them, they counted as a top 25 win. And that's when they start using that as leverage in their voting. And so I get a little frustrated with it, Mike. I don't know, man. I want to get your thoughts on it too, because sometimes I feel like I'm just a talking head. I don't have the other opinions of the experts. So what are your thoughts on rankings? Maybe you disagree with me, and that's totally fine.
I feel like you have the flashback last year. What happened in Florida State? Undefeated season. You want to see them in. Now, obviously, you have the 12-team playoffs, but they should have rightfully been in there. Obviously, they might not have been the better team over Bama, but like you have to look at the team itself. The team played great. They deserve to get in. Now, the rankings itself, a little inconsistent. I would probably compare the college football rankings to like trying to do power rankings for the NFL. It's like, what are we trying to? It's all a guessing game. Is Texas number 1? Is Ohio State number 1? And it's really just the strategy of, money making. Really, obviously, you need the rankings in the first few weeks of the season, especially for casual fans that may not know a lot about what's going on. They just look at the rankings, get an idea. Oh, okay, these are the top teams available. So I like it a little bit. You could flip-flop it there. Obviously, it's like all the teams that were in the top 10 originally, Florida State and Missouri, who just got killed by Texas A&M. It's like, where did they really deserve to be there? And now we get to after week 6, and where are the playoff teams? So it's very inconsistent, but I do like it being there for certain reasons, but I can understand why you don't like it,
Yeah, no, and it's one of those things. It's never going to change. It's not like me getting frustrated with it's going to change it, right? But it's just one of those things. Like you see the Missouri. I love that example, right? Like now A&M is going to have that. Oh, it was a top 10 win. Well, they weren't a top 10 team. You can just give it some time to figure that. And I just feel like that 6-week time frame gives you an idea of where teams are at. Sure, you'll still be trying to filter out teams by the end of the year, right? There will always be stuff like that. But I just felt like, man, now they have that as a resume builder. Now Texas A&M, when it comes down to like the 12, 13, 14 teams, like they're going to say, how many top 10 wins do they have? Well, they had Missouri. Well, was Missouri really a top 10 team? I don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe they'll come back and show us that they were, but they didn't look good. They chose a bad time to have a bad game. But anyway, kind of an interesting
Bama's 4-1, and they just lost to Vanderbilt, dude. They're at 7. So where's the argument there?
Oh, truth, dude. Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, absolutely. So it's just interesting. I want to bring up this topic with you too. I've never actually had a chance to chat with anybody about it. So, Mike, this is a great opportunity for me to go back and forth with you. This 12-team football, like college football playoff, I have been talking about it. I have my own thoughts on it. I'm excited for it. I'm stoked for the way that they're going to put it together. But I have a fear, Mike, that we're going to see even more programs and fan bases pissed off by season's end, because they're going to expect they're just going to get, it's 12 teams. We totally got a chance to make it, but it's not going to be that simple, right? And so I want to hear your thoughts on it. what do you feel like this system's going to be? Do you feel like do you feel the same as me, or maybe it's completely different?
I like it. Here's the thing. The 12 team, you go from 12 team 1 year, then you go 14 the next year. That really doesn't make too much sense to me. But there's going to be a lot of snubs. Boise State right now is number 12. There's a lot of teams you can argue to fit into that 12th spot. You got a lot of great teams. Even Army's undefeated. So you got a lot of great teams. Right now, you look at the playoff picture, they just dropped their scenarios for the season. And there's still a lot that can happen. Like, we're almost halfway through the season here. And I agree. I think a lot of teams are going to be like, oh, what happened with Ole Miss and Jackson Dart? Or it's like you pick your poison with who's going to get snubbed. Obviously, you have the top tier teams and Ohio State, Texas, but even that, the Big Ten and the SEC, like some teams that are supposed to be top and be in the top four, they're going to get knocked out. So it's going to be a lot of competitiveness, but at the same time, you can't fit everyone into the 12 team. You can't fit everyone in the 4 team. It's going to be the same story.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, that's exactly it. Like, we think that we're going to be able to fit everybody in, but we're not. Like, the slots will add up. You mentioned Boise State. You get a group of 5 team, gets the auto bid. The best group of 5 team gets the auto bid out of that. And that's going to ruffle some feathers, dude. There's going to be maybe Boise State's ranked 15th to 20th. Who knows if they were to win out and they get that 12th slot. And that means 3 or 4 teams in the rankings ahead of them get pushed out, right? And here's the other thing that I'm like, just random scenarios, right? But let's just say that in a conference championship, let's say you get it in Ohio State, who, let's just pretend they win out. Okay. So let's say they get to the conference championship and they lose. So they're not a conference champion, but they're still getting into the playoff. Well, that takes up another playoff spot, and the conference champion gets the auto bid in there because they win. And then you start to, and that could happen, especially in the SEC, because you've got these teams that are competing really well with one another. You might see a conference champion that's an underdog win. So maybe both of those teams and another one gets in. And so, like, all of a sudden 3 or 4 slots are taken up by one conference. Same thing happens over here. Dude, I just feel like it's not just going to be, I think people had this perception that it was going to be teams ranked 1 through 12 are going to get it. So we just got to be in the top 12. No, it's not going to be it at all. You might have an unranked team that wins a conference championship out of the P4 and they come in there and they get their slot. That could happen. I don't expect it to. I think most of the teams that'll be in the conference championships might be a ranked team. But, like, I mean, every once in a while in the Big Ten, for example, you had Northwestern with 4 losses. You might have a 3-loss USC coming in. I don't know, like, depending on how it all shakes out, and they might get a win. And you're like, what? So I just feel like I'm ready to see the chaos, but I think it's gonna ruffle some feathers, man. I think it's going to be. Looking at the playoff rankings right now, just as contenders. I know it's early; we're midway through the season. Who do you got as your top 3 true contenders after what you've seen in the first 6 weeks of the season? What are Mike Zanetti's top 3 right now that you truly believe could contend for a championship?
I would say, no doubt, number 1 has to be Ohio State. And I know you're big Ohio State fan, but they're probably playing the best football out of everyone. Georgia's been here and there. Bama, we just saw them battle it out with Bama. And I know Ohio State's getting to the big games. We'll get to one later versus Oregon. But I have to go Ohio State top 1. I would say Texas is number 2. They're getting Quinn Ewers back. That team looks dominant, even with Arch Manning in at quarterback. So, and then I'm tempted to put a team like Miami, just because we've seen Bama struggle, we've seen Georgia struggle. Is Oregon gonna top Ohio State? But obviously Cam Ward, they've had a couple struggles. So number 3, I'm gonna lock it in with Alabama. Even though they lost to Vanderbilt, I still think they're a very solid team. Jalen Milroe in the Heisman race. There's a lot of great Heisman players potentially for that award there. But I would say Ohio State 1. Where'd I go to? Texas 2, and then, yes, Alabama 3. It could be vice versa with Georgia, but that's what I got. What do you think?
Yeah, man, it's funny. I actually have all 3 of those. I actually have Texas at 1, Ohio State 2, Bama 3. And I'm, even as a Buckeyes fan, I'm fully aware that Ohio State hasn't played anybody yet, right? Like, they haven't been tested yet. Now, they do have a stretch of games coming up that will test them. Like, they were not one of those teams that had to be tested early, so they kind of benefit from that in the rankings. I wish, this is another reason I wish we could wait a little bit to see who teams really are. They're going to get a test in Oregon. It's going to be they're going to be going all the way out to the West Coast, different time zone, different environment. They're not used to that environment. It's not their normal Big Ten team, so it's a new type of deal with them over there. Last time Oregon played them, it was in Columbus. Different situation. So we'll see how they're at there. But then they've also got, Penn State, who is always tough to beat in their own home, and they've got Nebraska coming up, like just teams that could potentially do an upset. I've got Ohio State at 2. I love Texas with their quarterback situation. Like you said, Manning as a QB2, you basically don't even miss a beat, but I think they need Ewers if they want to win a championship because he's just got that competitor in him. He's got that drive, a championship mentality. I think he's going to help them go over the edge and play a little bit harder. I really think them. And then I was right there with you. I was going back and forth on Georgia, Bama. I still think if Georgia were to play Bama again, they'd boat race them. I think they would just attack their corners and their secondary. But both teams showed immense holes on the defensive side of the ball when they played each other. And Georgia's they've had a couple scary moments. They had an Auburn and a Kentucky game that kind of show where they were at. So that's why I would still put Bama. I know what Milroe's capable of. I think their defense is suspect, and I don't expect it to get much better before the end of the season, but I do believe their offense can execute, and they've got an absolutely incredible receiver, true freshman over there, 17-year-old dude who's just absolutely lighting up. So Williams is a monster, and I honestly believe he will be an X factor with them. So I have the same top 3 as you do, man. That's kind of crazy you said that.
I will say I did throw in Miami in there. They are definitely not a top 3 team. I can't not love the way Cam Ward is playing. Obviously, they had a couple questionable games. They got arguably an easier schedule. So definitely shouldn't have said that. But at the same time, you can't not love what they're doing.
Sorry, I actually forgot about the Miami thing. And I was going to talk about that too. I
didn't say it, but I was like, all right, Miami could do something. But at the same time, it's Bama, Georgia. There's no argument for Miami just because of the 2 games they just had,
Yeah, I'll give Miami the benefit of the doubt against Cal. You're going out to the West Coast, late night game. I'll give them that. There's something to be said about late night games in a different time zone. Like, it's hard. Like, they're playing over midnight in their home. Sure. Like, I will give them that. Different environment, whole other side of the country. But it was, college game day, weird atmosphere. But the comeback on that was what was so sick. It just showed Cam Ward's ability to really play that next level. I'm actually excited to see what they can do. Everyone hates on the ACC. I understand the concepts there. Like, you wonder where their competition's at, but I kind of like their vibe. Everyone wants to hate on Miami. I like their vibe. I like Cam Ward. I wish the Buckeyes would have taken him. So, I mean, I'm a fan of his. So I'm right there with you. I don't necessarily think they're up there in the top 3 or 4, but I would put them in the top 7 or 8. I really do believe that they will compete. But contenders, I would say those top 3, I'm right there with you. As we look at this week's Nation's Best Who You Got game of the week, looking like it's Oregon, Ohio State, right? A 2 versus 3 matchup. Okay, I'm actually heading out there on either Friday night or Saturday morning. I'll drive out, but it's about a 7.5 hour drive for me. I'm a huge Buckeyes fan. Looking forward to going to Autzen Stadium to kind of see what happens. My Broncos, Boise State, already played Oregon in Autzen this year. Almost beat them. Came up just short. But I'm looking forward to seeing this game. This is an exciting game, and it's going to be very telling for both programs. Who can play at what level, when healthy, against adversity. I'm curious what you're looking for in this game. Outside of just who's going to win, what are we looking for as being X factors in this game, Mike?
I feel like it's got to be a shootout, right? Will Howard versus Dylan Gabriel. The only question I have is, can Oregon keep up with how dominant this Ohio State offense and defense, let's be honest. But Oregon had a couple weeks where they were coming out slow. Boise State gave them a run for their money. And looking at this game, I feel like the true freshman Jeremiah Smith is going to take over this game. And eventually, I think Ohio State's going to start to pull away. Going to be a great game, but I can't not see Will Howard just out shooting Dylan Gabriel in this one.
I could see that. I'm trying to be like not so excited. Like, yeah, I'm trying to not be biased, but I'm looking at it. Gabriel, the one thing that concerns me about him, I'm actually a fan of his. I've loved watching his career. But the last week against Michigan State, which is a subpar team in the Big Ten, in my opinion, threw 2 interceptions, 2 turnovers in the red zone, like right at the end zone. That should have been 14 points for him, like easy. They were just marching right down the field, and he made some costly mistakes. I expect him to shape up, right? He's not going to be doing that against Ohio State. So he's going to probably be a little smarter with his decision-making, doing his thing. So I expect him to be a little more competitive and eliminate those turnovers. The one thing I'm looking forward to see, though, is Ohio State. While they won 35-7 against Iowa, Iowa's offense is disgusting. They're terrible. However, their defense did shut Ohio State down. The score is deceiving. I watched the entire game, every single snap, and Ohio State struggled immensely against that defense. Did they pull away in the second half? Yeah, because they had a turnover that was in the red zone. Like they were able to score quickly 2 times in a row, and then that's when the momentum completely shifted. But it was a close game at halftime. Like, it was extremely hard, and Iowa is not built to get in a shootout, so it just looked worse than it was. But their defense shut Ohio State down. Like, Ohio State could not throw the ball. Like, they were doing 5-yard dinker passes. They could not throw the ball. They had a scheme that was good. And they were proving that the front seven, if you get tough with Ohio State, they're not just going to run right over you. They're going to get 2 or 3 yards of chunk, and then they're going to force them into 3rd and longs. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm going to see if Ohio State can go toe-to-toe with Oregon. I think Oregon has some gaps in the front seven, but I do think Ohio State does too. I think they're going to have to see how they do in an environment like that in Autzen Stadium in Eugene. Who are you taking? Like, so you mentioned you think Ohio State pulls it out. Smith being the X factor on the outside, Howard being able to win in a shootout with Gabriel. But what's the final score in your opinion, Mike?
I want it to be a good game, but I will say Ohio State's going to take it. We'll go 38-28.
Dude, are you kidding me? I said 38-27. That's crazy.
Oh, that's crazy. Going back to Michigan State with what you said with Oregon struggling and Dylan Gabriel, that same Ohio State team kind of dominated. Like, I want to see the run game get more involved. Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins. If they can get the run game going, like you said, there's some gaps on the D-line of Oregon. That will be the game changer. Like, obviously, you want your receivers to play well. You want it to be a shootout. But I think the run game needs to be a big factor and also contribute to controlling the ball and being in this game. And that's why I say it's a 10-point game, because I think eventually they will pull it out and pull more away in the second half.
I'm with you on that one. That's so funny. I said 38-27. I had a mark down. I think it's going to be a close game, honestly, going into the fourth quarter, and then Ohio State will eventually kind of just pull away double digits. But I'm looking forward. I'll see what I like about Ohio State is obviously they need to get their running backs involved. But Will Howard he's a tall dude. Dude's 6'6", and he's got legs. Like, he can move. He takes 20-yard steps each time he moves. And so that's what I hope to see him pull the ball a little bit. And try to spread that out with the running game. Because as soon as you get Ohio State in a situation where you got to crowd the box a little bit and you put those receivers in one-on-one coverages across the field, it's dangerous. Like, there's not many secondaries that can guard 3 receivers in open space for an extended period of time. So if they're going to be stacking the box, I feel I'm right there with you. If you can get the run game going between all 3 of those guys, Howard, Judkins, and Henderson, it's going to be tough to defend them on the outside.
So do you think there's a possibility that this can be like last week with Missouri, Texas A&M? Do you think there's a possibility that either Ohio State or Oregon just surprises the heck out of you and just blows the other team away?
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, Mike, as you say that, I could see it being either team. I want to say Ohio State's this powerhouse. They haven't played anybody yet, so I don't know that, right? Like, so maybe they get punched in the mouth, and I don't know how they respond to adversity quite yet against a good team. And I could see Oregon, just based on the mistakes they've made, and the struggles they've had getting going early in games. It's the same thing happening to them. I could totally see that happening. I don't want it to be because I'm going to the game, but I could totally see that happening, man. What about you? Do you feel like that's got a possibility?
I was looking at the Missouri game last week. I'm like, okay, is Brady Cook mentioning, practice is louder than Kyle Field? I was laughing about that one after the game, but it's like, do you think like any given Saturday, does this like a primetime game that was at 12 o'clock? This is a 7:30. You want to see a good game, but is there that possibility? Like, is always in your mind, but I don't think so. I mean, as much as I want to believe it and say, hey, the Missouri type of stereotyping type of thing, or maybe it's what's the word here? But besides the point, yes, I don't think any team's going to pull away. I think it's going to be a close game. Maybe defensive matchup. We won't have a shootout. But it's up in the air. I don't really top 3 teams in the league that I think are. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that it will be a good game. I just really hope it's not a blowout the other way around for me, for the sake of being a Buckeyes fan. But I'm just looking forward to some good football. So we're checking it out, guys. For those who are listening in, Obviously, this is posted on Friday, so make sure to give us your picks in the comments below with who you guys think is going to win that Ohio State-Oregon game. And the last question for the week that I got for you, Mike, is Heisman front runners. We've got a couple of guys going. I mean, I want to know, you've already mentioned Milroe being one of those guys that could potentially win the Heisman. Who do you believe, could potentially pull away with this? There's so many of them.
Right now, if the season continues to go like this, and I know it has to be Ashton Jeanty. The guy is unbelievable. If he had 180 yards in the first half of that game, who knows what he would have done if he played the whole game. I mean, this guy, the odds on him to score a touchdown was like minus 1,100. Like, it's like almost every game he goes for 200 yards, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 touchdowns.
Yeah, he hasn't. So that's my guy right there. I'm trying to land him on the show, by the way. He's just down the road from me here and trying to get him on the podcast. A lot of mutual connections there too. The thing with Ashton, I know, so that's my pick too. And people will say, oh, you're a Boise State guy. That's why, right? Like, no, that's not why. Like, let me tell you all something. He's now missed 5 quarters of football. So that's over a full game's worth of football that he hasn't played because they've just been running through fulls. Okay. Most of his yards are after contact. So what people don't understand is, like, look at the teams they've played. Well, even against Oregon, he ran all over them. Every team, he has this ability, the way that he's built, he's a freaking unit. And so the way he just runs, he's got a center of gravity that's unbelievable, and he bounces off guys. Like, you watch the Washington State game. Washington State was pretty solid when they came into Boise a week and a half ago. And what happened? They ran right over the top of them. Like, he has this ability to break tackles, and he changes the game completely. Not just that, like, obviously he's getting yards after contact, he's getting touchdowns, but he's opening up the field. He's a receiving threat, which is huge. And then he opens up the field for the entire team. So, like, now that Madsen, the quarterback, is actually getting a flow, it's very scary for other teams. So, like, there's an impact that he makes that's not even on the stat sheet. It's just like it opens up the entire game. I'm a huge Jeanty fan. We'll see if he can keep it up. I always have this feeling, Mike, like, running backs, it's hard. You always say, like, well, they're playing at that level, but just stack the box. Like, stack the box and just tackle him, right? And there's going to be a game probably down the road where he gets like 60 yards, right? Because he carries it 22 times for 60 yards, and then his momentum completely halts. So I'm waiting to see if that happens. But there are so many athletes out there that are potential Heisman candidates, and so I'm looking forward in the next month before we chat again on this podcast to see who kind of pulls away from the pack, right? Like, who pulls away? Does Jeanty continue up with this? Or do we see somebody else step up? Does Colorado continue to play well, where maybe Hunter is in the mix for that and all of that stuff? So
that's the only problem. Final thoughts, but the running backs don't get love. It's the same thing with the MVP award. Like, last year, I feel like Michael Penix could have arguably been the Heisman. So, like, it's always going to be something like either your team gets snubbed or a player gets snubbed from an award, and everyone's just like, what are we doing here? So Ashton should definitely, the way he's playing, if he continues, but I wouldn't be surprised if they gave it to Milroe or Cam Ward. Like, that's just how they do it. It's a little bit annoying.
We're going to see how it works out. And I'm looking forward in about 4 weeks. Mike and I will jump back on and do some more chatting about college football. Again, guys, I'm going to remind y'all, check out Mike's pages. I'll put the links here in the description so y'all can go follow him on the pod, follow him on his social media platforms. And I would also shout out Nation's Best Football. Shout out to Bob Smith. I've been working with Bob, partnering with Bob since 2018. And the guy's awesome. He's the one who connected the two of us together just because of our platforms. And, you know, it's some great opportunities we've had because of Bob. So shout out to Nation's Best Football. Give them a follow as well. And you guys know the drill. Hit this follow button here, subscribe, because we'll be coming to you next week with another podcast. Take care. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review. It would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.